Hey guys, welcome back to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. I'm Joe Klemczewski, founder of the Diet Doc, here with Dr. Kori Propst, our health psychologist and wellness director. And we're still talking about what happens when you face adversity. And I've used some hyperbole in this, Kori, talked about devastation and chaos and all of that. And we've had some pretty big examples. It happens. I mean, we all do face some pretty bad things in life that can completely take you from a place of momentum and stability, and I know what my life is like, to all of a sudden everything is at a screeching halt. So we're not just talking about a little, like a bad day. This is a life change of direction. How do I even get through that, let alone maybe prepare for those in the future? And I know moving from just psychological flexibility to self-efficacy, a big part of it is resilience. And that's been a bit of a buzzword in psychology. So fill us in from a psychology perspective. How do we get to a point where literal resilience is a value, is something that we can engage as a tool?
Yeah. Well, I think, Joe, that resilience is built. So we literally have to go through difficulty and experience adversity in order to build it up in our lives. The interesting thing about resilience, though, is that I think when people conceptualize resilience, they think of it as it's either present in a person or it's absent. Like, that person's really resilient, or that person's really not resilient. And it's bigger than that. It's more nuanced than that. The other thing, in terms of the way I've thought about it, is resilience, is it a trait in a person? Is it a process that a person goes through? Like the building of it, like I mentioned, or is resilience an outcome? And I don't know, Joe. I think that resilience has so many different facets attached to it. And when I think about it, and especially when I reflect on what my experience was, I think of everything that helped to promote resilience within me. One of those things being help and support. Individuals who don't have people who they can rely on, people who they can talk to, people who they can ask for help, don't have as much resilience. People who don't have economic means, people who don't have, who may live in a really sort of socioeconomically suffering environment, don't have as much resilience. When I had my accident, so I'm laying on the ground now, my bike is on top of me, I'm face up. I recall hearing my cycling mentor's voice in the background saying, "Kori, I'm here, it'll be okay." Then I recall hearing Greg, who is another rider, an EMT, saying, "Kori, I'm here, don't move, it's gonna be fine." Then I remember hearing, and I felt calm, I felt taken care of, right? Like it was literally gonna be okay. Then I heard another voice of another rider, and it sounded like this: "Oh no, what'd you do?" Literally. And I felt, in that moment, I'm laying on the ground hurt. I felt ashamed, Joe. Like, that sort of thing does not promote resilience. So in times of adversity, if we have people who are kind, who are compassionate, who offer their assistance, their help, it makes such a difference. If I had been surrounded by a group of those people who are like, "What'd you do?"
Well, this is where you get to bring out your cognitive behavioral sledgehammer, because I'm glad you covered all three bases. You talked about, there's probably a genetic bias, as there always is. There some of these things are just traits that some people have more of than not, but that's just one facet. There's the environmental, things around us. But then you also, right off the bat, you use the term, is it something that we build, something that we have to, like a muscle, we go through adversity, and therefore it has the potential to build resilience. It can also degrade resilience if not handled properly. So, I know this is your wheelhouse to say, this is what we can do. Talk about, self-efficacy. This is what we can affect. So in that moment, your life is going to change, and you've got that acute scenario, all those voices around you. At some point, you had to gather within yourself, and you had to decide, what's tomorrow going to look like? What's tonight going to look like? What am I going to do, next week? You had to decide how you're going to go through this.
I think if there were one of the factors, Joe, is a deliberate movement towards what are my strengths. And you and I have talked about this before, but character strengths. And one of them being like, can I be curious about this instead of catastrophic about it? So asking those questions, like you said, what needs doing right now? What do I have an influence over? How can I move forward in a more open-minded sort of a way? These were questions that I asked myself over and over and over and over and over and over again through the healing process. Because when I looked at the alternative to become really constricted and controlling around everything, like that, literally, it feels confining and it feels suffocating. So asking myself in those moments, what attitude do I want to embody in this situation? I remember a week after the accident when I'm laid up. Like, I remember I was supposed to go to Seattle for our Emerge conference. And I'm sitting in the recliner and I'm recording a video instead of getting on a plane to go there. And in that moment, I had to forgive myself. And I had to offer myself some mercy and kindness, because there were plenty of voices popping up that really did feel ashamed, and that were berating me for being so stupid to have let this happen. And now look at all the people who are going to suffer because I can't be a part of this thing that I said I was going to. So there were those voices. There was that inner critic popping up, and I had to take a breath, realize that inner critic isn't telling the truth. That yes, people have been impacted, but it doesn't make me a horrible person. It's not something that I did purposefully.
Can I interrupt you and just tell you that this is one of the biggest impacts you've had in my life? As somebody who, has a lot of passion and energy, that can lead to impulsivity and can lead to catastrophizing, which was part of my toolkit. And to be able to pull back and to do what you just articulated, that, what can I affect right now? A lot of times when you face adversity, what you're describing, that imposter syndrome voice, oh, there you go, you failed again. Look, you just let a bunch of people down. In times when I felt like I was the cause of things that, maybe letting people down, it's just paralyzing. Mm-hmm. And the only way I've ever gotten through that is to literally just say, look, I've got a choice. I'm either just going to lay here in this paralysis and do nothing and just watch it all burn down, or I'm going to have to get up and take one step. What's the next best step? And that, just trust that that's going to lead to another step. So, getting back in, I think that's kind of how you build resilience.
Getting back in the game.
Yeah, you just got to get up and, if you take another punch, you're going to take another punch, but at least you're back on your feet.
Doing it though. Yeah. Well, okay. So you bring up a really good point. Resilience is very active process, not a passive one. Not a passive one at all. Like, I'm just gonna see what happens. That can be kind of an open, spacious approach, but at the same time, it doesn't work for me. That's not what resilience is for me personally. I was constantly asking myself, okay, how can I heal the best way possible? What's going to be pushing it too far? And what's just going to be a little bit more challenge than it was yesterday? And that in itself is challenging, because there are things that, I would talk to people too. I'd talk to my mom. I would talk to Ben. I would say, like, what about doing this, or what about not doing this? And so I didn't have to choose everything on my own. At the same time, I had people saying, I don't think you should do that. And then I would do it anyway, because I really did feel like I know myself the best. I'm going to feel if I'm pushing it too far. And then I'm going to relax and take a step back. But unless I take that step, I'm not going to know, right? If I don't push the envelope just a little bit, I'm not going to know whether it's too much.
And I love what you just said about, again, soliciting the help of others. What a theme. Last night I just posted in our Diet Doc owners forum, our program owners, here's kind of a recap of the last month. And my whole narrative was all about not doing things alone, because when we feel alone, we tend to isolate ourselves even more.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of reaching out. So I'm going to stop you there, if that's okay, Kori. Yep. Just for the sake of time, and say that this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to resilience. But as we maybe go a couple more episodes into how you can use adversity as a change for possible good, for things like this, you never build resilience. You don't know what you can do until you're tested, and I know that can sound cliche, but gosh, is it true, man? I mean, until you've been rattled to your bones, you don't know what is possible in either direction.
No, it really forces you to think in a different way and to move through your life in a different way, if you're conscious enough and aware enough to decide to do that. If that makes sense.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Kori. And you guys, I hope you're getting some use of this series, because it is just something I think we're all going to need at some point. So thanks again, Kori, and thank you guys for watching and listening. We will see you next time in the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast.